It's a good thing I'm not a dentist. I don't think people would appreciate me showing up to work Monday morning with hands that look like this. Welcome back. Okay, speed intro, go. We're going to make some tools. We're going to sand the heck out of the neck, get it finished sanded. We're going to grain fill the neck. We're going to try and learn to get this body even better polished, following some advice from somebody who commented. Let's get to work. We're going to start with making tools. Here we go. All right, I've been wanting to make a jig to help me glue down fretboards to necks for a long time because I just get tired of, getting the fretboard on top of the neck blank and then trying to get clamps lined up, and it's just a hassle. And it would be so easy to just make a fixture that has the clamps attached to it. And so these will just sit on something, screw to it, neck will lay in between. These will just literally clamp down the fretboard to the, super simple, really simple, but I feel like that could make a big difference in how easy it is to do this process. That's what I'm about to do. I have this pile, I have a whole bunch of these clamps. They don't come assembled, so I gotta put all the rubber feet in them and then design something that will hold the neck blank, that will be somewhat universal. I'd like the Resonator necks to fit in there, but I'd also like the acoustic necks and the electric necks and maybe even a bass. Okay, let's just put this together. It's not going to be complicated. I'm not even going to film the process of me putting it together. I'm just going to show you the end result, because when you see it, you go, oh yeah, that was simple. Apparently I only ordered enough of the little clamps to do these Resonator necks, so I'm going to need to order some more to do like electrics or basses or acoustics. But check it out. It's so simple. You just put the neck in there, you put the fretboard on, and you line it up with the pins and the frets, and you go clamp, clamp, clamp. Okay, I decided to just steal 3 of the long ones from my other jig that I'm going to make so that I can hit the middle of the fretboard nicely too. And kind of what motivated me was right in the middle of building this thing, my 3 little short truss rods that will go in this neck showed up. So yeah, since I've got those, that means I can get the fretboard and glued onto this thing, and that means I can just use this jig. So I decided I'll just put these 3 long ones on here, and that will help me reach the middle. Yeah, I like that. That was awesome. So much easier than trying to fiddle clamps into all the right places and all of that. Okay, now we wait till tomorrow and we take it out and we get this neck done. I don't have a lot of space, and so I can't just spread out with all these big tools. So what we're working on is I'm making a little router table. That's going to be a miniature one, and so you can see I've got the router mounted in this really heavy cast iron base. And then I have a Corian top that I've made where the plate sits down in and it's all leveled already. So everything I do is just shaving 1/16 of an inch off of, things that are already cut almost to the right size anyway. So all of my router table work is going to be very minimal. It doesn't need to be a big, heavy, gnarly thing. And I think this is a nice size. I don't know how long this is. Looks like it's about 16, 18 inches long, like 73,000 millimeters or something if you're in Canada. Yeah, so I'm just going to make some legs for this thing real quick and just get this out of the way so I can get back to working on the guitar. It's kind of cute. Look at that little guy. It works out good. And there you go. Well, a little router table ready to go. The Corian top worked out really well. We better get some guitar work done, or I'm going to have nothing to show you guys on the guitar this week. I'm pretty far along on this neck. I've got it carved. I've got the heel shaped. It's really far along. I'm getting ready now to put the frets in. And so all I'm doing now is taking this little gauge, which tells you if the depth of your fret slot is good all the way across. And once you verify that every single one of these slots is the right depth, then you can put your frets in and you don't have to worry about having a high fret or anything weird happening. So, okay, here we go. Let's get these fret slots figured out and then we can get the frets in this thing. Okay, I'm declaring that ready for frets. This fretboard looks cool. It probably doesn't capture it on the camera, but it's got just some cool stripes and figuring in it. It's really neat. Once it gets polished up a little more, I think it'll be even more obvious, but it's subtle but nice, and I really like it. I like it better than the one that's on the first one. Really nice rolled edge here. Okay, let's get some frets in this thing, and then I'll do side dots. And then I can get this all cleaned up and sanded up. And because it's mahogany, I'm probably going to have to grain fill a little bit. It's raining today here, so I'm probably not going to be able to spray lacquer on it. I'm assuming that the humidity is really high. Oh, it's only 65. That's pretty good. It's a little higher than I would like, though, so I'm probably not going to spray 65. I don't like spraying anything over 60. I've done it in 65 because I was desperate and it worked out okay, but when it goes bad, and then you got to go backwards a whole bunch, and I don't like that. So I'm not in that big of a hurry, so let's just wait till it's not 65 and we get down to 60. Well, I decided to not bore you guys with that process because I did that on the last build, so go back and watch that if you want to see it. Fret ends are great, no issues there. Okay, let's move on to getting this neck to fit on the body pretty nicely. So I think we'll move to the inside shop where it's warmer. All right, I've moved to the inside and I'm starting to amass the parts for these things. I've got the cover plate for this one. I've got a couple of hot rod cones. I don't know if I'm going to put this one in mine or just live with mine for now and put this in the brass one that comes next. Got the Kent Armstrong pickups, the mini humbuckers, a bunch of those in. Got the National biscuit bridge, got the tuners in. And let's see, right now I'm working on getting the neck fitment dialed in on this thing. It's coming along really, really well. I think it's way better than the first one. Actually, I took the first one out to a little gig, the men's barbecue at my church, where we did a bunch of music at that. I tried to play it at that, and during sound check, I was hoping it was going to be loud enough, unplugged, but it turns out the room and with all the people and everything in there, it just wasn't loud enough to cut through the whole crowd and be heard at the back of the room. In the end, I ended up playing the acoustic, one of the acoustics that my dad built me years ago, which is by far my favorite acoustic ever. It's perfect size, it plays amazing, and it sounds great plugged in. Why did I not put a pickup in that thing? It's just killing me. So clearly I'm gonna have to take this apart and cut a pickup hole in there and put a pickup in it, because I would have played it all night long last night had it had a pickup in there, but didn't get a chance to. Anyway, it was cool to get it out, and lots of people checking it out and looking at it, and lots of questions. So yeah, pretty neat. Okay, let's get to work on this thing. Let's see if we can get this neck fitting really, really well. Okay, it's starting to get pretty nice fitting here. There's a little bit of work to do to it still, but that's pretty darn good. Well, it's a shadow over here, but anyway, that just needs very minor modification and that'll be good. So I don't know if you guys are reading the comments or not, but there's a guy named Simon Harris Sculpture who gave me some great feedback on maybe how to polish this thing better, because he polishes stainless steel sculptures. Okay, this is not exactly what Simon Harris Sculpture told me to get, but it's pretty close. But I was at Harbor Freight and they had a parking lot sale today, and dude, 39 bucks for this thing. Variable speed, I mean 39 bucks, that was worth the shot. And I just bought a medium polishing foam compound. I got some of the black and some of the gray. I may need to get, you know, a cloth wheel that spins more like a buffer. Oh, like one of these buffing wheels, you know, on the buffer. Get something that will spin one of those things to do this metal polishing. But who knows? Maybe this will work. We'll see. We're about to find out. So here we go. Let's see if we can figure out how. I'm just going to work probably this corner and see what happens, and so that I know if this is going to be a good result or not. Okay. Come along with me for a ride on this. Who knows what this is going to be like. Well, that doesn't seem to be having much effect on it at all. I think tomorrow I will try again with this black with an actual buffing wheel, like a cotton, you know, and I could probably adapt it to this thing, or I could just put it on my buffer, which I'm not super excited to put it on my buffer, because I'll tell you what, if that buffing wheel grabs any of this stuff, I'm not stopping this body from going somewhere. This little spot that I did buff over here, so it's not as shiny as I was expecting, but on the other hand, it is a pretty decent finish. I don't know, I'll sleep on it tonight and see where we're at tomorrow. All right, good night. You guys sleep well. Okay, let's get to some final sanding on this thing, and that's going to be fascinating, but I'll show you just a blip of it anyway, because, you know, who doesn't want to see sanding? Maybe I'll put all this in the video so that people understand final sanding means, like, yeah, we're final sanding, and it takes a long time to make everything, to make yourself happy. Like, right now I'm fighting a low spot where this is a nice line all the way around until I get to right at the very end. I've got a little low spot, so I'm trying to get this up and this back to make this line perfect all the way around, but yeah, it's still there. It's a little high right here on this corner, and it's lower on this side, and it's making me have a low spot right there. So this corner's got to come back some, and it's really good over here, low right there, high right there. I think this high spot is more my problem than this low spot. If I fix this high spot, I bet you this low spot will clean right up. Oh, that's feeling good. Oh, much better. So I'm using 220 right now, and everything's just real soft. You don't want to be overdoing it when you're getting to these final sandings, especially when you're doing these edges. Any kind of thing that has a point, you want to just be real slow, real careful. You can feel it usually better than you can see it. This side's got one little spot I'm not super happy with. Okay, that fixed that. That side was already good there. There's a little wrinkle in it right there, probably from when the wood bent when I steamed it, and it's left me just a little tiny spot of a wrinkle right there. When I grain fill it and do lacquer, you'll probably never ever see that, but I would rather not see it now. I've always wondered how the big factories get through this process quickly. Especially on necks where you can see the grain of the wood and they can't just slather Bondo and stuff on it. How do they do it quickly and be able to sell guitars for so cheap? I just don't understand how they get through this process so fast. One of the issues that's not helping me right now is I have super glue on my fingers, and so I'm not feeling as well as I should be feeling this stuff. What was I super gluing anyway? I don't even remember super gluing anything today. Anyway, it's not helping me. I see big problems on the end here that are going to take some dealing with. This corner right here has got a rounded over part that there's no fixing that, because you'd have to add material, which you can't. Which means this whole thing's got to come down just slightly to clean up that little corner right there. Or the whole thing needs to match that. I don't want it to match that, so I'm going to go for bringing this whole section down just a little bit. And then the light's not very good right here, but there's a little low spot. I don't know if you can see on the camera, it's dark right there. That's a little tiny low spot. I mean, I can't even feel it, but obviously it's a low spot since it's shiny. And then look how scratchy that is. That was obviously some pretty rough grit sandpaper that got me to this point. And now it's time to clean all that up. So now the top edge looks pretty good. It doesn't have that part where I need to bring the whole thing down. Although it's got a bump in it here. Yeah, it's just going to take me some work to get this end all just right. There's a lot to do on this final sand, I can tell you already. And it's even just on the top of this, there's a ton to do. Holy cow. Okay, there we go. Do I keep filming? I don't know. I'm sure this is boring the heck out of you guys, but it'd just be good for people to understand. You buy a custom guitar, a hand-built guitar, and people just got to go through this, and it's not easy. Maybe there's probably a better way that I don't know and I don't do. If you know, tell me. Sometimes the sawdust builds up on the edges of things, and you can tell from the way the sawdust builds up if that's a good or not. The sawdust was building up nicely on this one, but this one it's low, right, or it's high, just on one little side here. I could see that just from the sawdust. There's not much, it just needs a tiny little bit of adjustment there. That's probably enough. Now I'm not using a block. If I was going to really sand this thing, I would use something flat and I'd use a block to keep it all flat. But because I'm using such light pressure and I'm just doing cleanup work, I'm not really using a block right now. I've got a little bit of grain that's a little rough right through here. I'm probably going to have to wet all of this and raise the grain and then sand it back again before I'm done here. Even though I'm grain filling, sometimes I'll still wet it and raise the grain and then sand that back and then grain fill, because it just makes for less sanding after you grain fill. Okay, I think I'm ready to grain fill. I got booted out of my spot because we got Dylan here. He's working on his. I think I probably spent another hour. How long have you been here, Dylan?
About an hour.
Okay, so I probably spent...
actually, like an hour and a half.
Okay, I probably spent another hour and a half final sanding this thing, just so you guys know. Dylan, what are you working on?
I'm working on the neck.
Dylan's got a 7-string neck going.
It is a process.
Yeah, and it's something. That's a good way to put it. He's got lots of veneers to make today. He's working on his transition here. He's deciding on truss rods. I'm telling him these are junk because I hate them. He's not sure. Yeah, hopefully today he gets this transition done and he gets a veneer on this thing and he starts getting this final sanding of his wild headstock done.
Yep.
Okay, that's what's going on in here. So I'm getting ready to grain fill, and I've got my red Solo party cups ready to go. I've got my, I'm going to use some, no, that's not it. That's the wrong color. I'm going to use some orange in my grain fill stuff. And I'm going to use orange because you'll see it'll give it a nice undertone. And then when I lay on lacquer, it'll have some brown in it and it'll glow. It'll be really shiny and really nice, and it'll be kind of glowy. I used to make my own grain fill out of pumice and Danish oil and all that other stuff. And the first few Les Pauls I built were all done like that, but that's just a giant waste of time, and I don't think it was any better than this Timbermate stuff. I love this Timbermate grain fill. It takes the trans tint really well. Colors come out great. And yeah, it works really good. It sure beats mixing up your own grain fill with all those chemicals that they used to use on the old 59 Les Pauls. So that's what we're going to do now. I'm going to mix up some Timbermate in here with some orange trans tint, and we're going to make this thing orange for now, and then we're going to sand it back, and then we'll spray the lacquer on it when it quits raining here in another 30 years. I'm starting to think we should build an ark here instead of a guitar, because that's how much it rains right now. All right, Dylan was just laughing about, we don't know why you guys are watching this stuff. I'm just stirring orange goop in a cup. Okay, there's the orange grain filler mixed up. Okay, here we go. We're gonna slather this crud on there.
Oh, but boy, was I wrong. I thought you meant me well, but it was not so. Say you the real deal, and your word good as gold. All the truth is, there's very little to you at all. You can count me out. You can count me out. From now on, you can count me out. Yeah.
Okay, the orange grain fill's done. It's dry. I'm getting ready to sand it just very lightly. So that's going to be a beautiful undertone to the browns that are going to go on top of this. I think this thing is going to look amazing. In fact, when it's just even slightly wet. So when it's got a gloss to it, it'll look much more like that with just the orange undertones. I'm going to have a little bit of brown, so darker on the outside edges and lighter on the inside edges. That orange is really just going to make this thing really pretty. Now that I just got it wet again, I have to wait to sand it, but I was just about to sand it and knock down all of the... It's pretty smooth, but it just needs just a light, quick sand. And then if it would ever stop raining here, I could spray a coat of lacquer on here and get it to start looking great, but looks like it's not going to stop raining for a while, so gonna have to wait. Well, I've run out of time this week. I hate to leave you guys hanging here with this neck looking like it does with just the grain fill in there and kind of the salmon orange color on it. I guess we didn't get back to polishing like I said I was going to, but I did find underneath my bench, I found a stash of stuff, and one of the things that was in there is a sisal. That's the word I was looking for. The buffing pad is called a sisal, and that's what I was after. I found a set of those. So I have a sisal on there, and I am going to adapt it onto that new buffer that I got. So this guitar is going to come together really nicely. I feel like the quality's there. It's a really high quality build. My only disappointment is still the back. I'm still struggling on making a back that I'm really happy with. Remember, this one had a little bit of that ripple when I bead rolled it, so that obviously can't have that in there. And I just want to get that curvature that you see on the Nationals and some of the others. So I'm working on redesigning the press concept that I was doing before. And yeah, hopefully we can get this back dialed in a little bit nicer. Once I get the backs figured out, you know, these are going to be sellable instruments at some point here if I keep getting these little things worked out, these little bugs. If you guys are seeing things that you think, you know, hey, that's not good, you tell me in the comments. One of the comments that I think I get a lot, the one-piece neck. So the neck stick that's part of the neck instead of like the others do where the neck stick is separate from the neck. So I have a very small gap between the end of this thing and the back of the guitar where the end pin goes in. And my thinking there is that when that end pin goes in here, it literally pulls this neck block towards the body. So it makes this flat joint right here tight up against the body that direction, and then the screws that go through the top of it, you know, obviously make that part of the joint really tight. So I feel like having the one piece where I can put a lot of pressure on that end pin and really pull the whole neck this direction against the front of the body, I feel like that's got to help with some of the vibration and sustain and things like that. So I'm happy with the one piece neck stick. It's probably a bit of a waste of wood, I get it, but I like it. I think I'm going to keep going with that concept. This one member's got the truss rod in it, so it added a little bit of weight to the neck. It's a little bit heavier than the first one with that carbon fiber rod. Obviously, I mean, truss rods are heavy, especially those single action ones. But I just like those single action ones better. I hate those dual action rods. I just hate them. I've probably fixed, I don't know, I've steamed fretboards off of several acoustic guitars and a couple of electrics where they have the two-way truss rod in there, and somebody's cranked it down so tight that it literally broke the nut off of there. And then at that point, if, you know, depending on how the neck is, if you can't get it out the end, which you usually can't because there's glue on it or whatever, you can never get them out, well, then you got to steam the whole darn fretboard off, get that thing out of there, get a new one in there, put it all back. I mean, it's a lot of work. And I've never really seen anybody break the ones that don't have that. In fact, I have one right here. So a lot of them, they just break off this little adjuster nut because you can see how small it is right there. And people just go crazy tightening these things down. So I really kind of hate these truss rods. Plus, there's all these voids, you know, in them, in between the neck and stuff. And they just don't fit in there tight. You got to use tape to keep the glue out of it. I just don't, I'm not a fan. If you guys haven't figured that out, not a fan. I much prefer these Martin style ones. They're only one way, but I've never ever once had to use the opposite direction on these to bring a nut up. So anyway, these are a little heavier than these ones, but I also feel like they're going to sustain more. They take up more of the voids in the neck, and they're solid. They work really good. And it's much harder to break these things. The rod that's inside these is pretty big, you know, bigger than this little rod. And this nut adjuster on the end is not going to break off of it. I mean, if anything, you'll strip out the threads on there, but that would be pretty hard. Okay, enough rambling. Okay, that's it this week. I really appreciate you guys watching, hanging out with me, following along. I really wish I would have got back to buffing the body and trying to get that done. I'm leaving you guys hanging on a bunch of stuff with that that weird salmon colored grain fill and not getting back to buffing the body. But I'm just out of time this week, so we'll pick it up next week and see where all ends up. Thanks for coming along. Thanks for watching. See you guys next week.